talk about it is. I just have a particular time rather than. I hope I give you some insight. I'm a chemist, as I was introduced earlier, and like to look at everything from that perspective. Not that I do not believe in all this inner science and holistic view. It's sometimes difficult to comprehend. I know the yoga allows us to do that. I do teach a class on science of Kriya Yoga here in the university. So I like to make the connection. It's not that, first of all, I'm probably not as enlightened to get there. And secondly, I do work with young people, so it's easier for me to show them from what I understand and what they can feel. And that's why I'm trying to use this word, the title of Chemistry of Yoga. But the real issue is the mechanism to create and unite the world. I think that the world is, as we see, is really because of chemistry. If we didn't have chemistry, we wouldn't be able to see it. So with that, what I want to take you through is some ideas to what we have today, and then try to use science to understand what those ideas might mean, and ultimately come back to see whether that starts making sense from our unified perspective. So first thing I want to tell you is yoga is really taking maybe it doesn't work here. So yoga is taking center stage, because it was at Easter in White House where there was a yoga garden, and you can imagine there must have been some religious eyebrows as to why the yoga is there. There is a controversy about yoga, whether it has anything to do with religion or whether it really violates any of the religious beliefs. And so this is really getting to the borderline where there will be conflict. Many times conflicts are not really necessarily a bad thing, because then you have a better understanding. So I wanted to show you the slide to see that it's on the Easter, there is a yoga garden in White House. So people are able to understand and view yoga for what it is, rather than just having a religious perspective, or if there is any at all. But what happens, at least this is my view, I think this is where I think the religions are, here at the bottom, which is really the management of what I think is the knowledge. There is nothing, university is also a manager of knowledge, so we also make mistakes, and many times we are called on as to the kind of things that we do, whether they are correct or not correct. But true knowledge, I think, is what you're going to get better insight, which comes from the spiritual knowledge, where you do meditation and yoga, and then you develop philosophies, and those philosophies are then turned into some kind of rituals to have really them going on without having to necessarily going into it deep every time for everyone. And when those rituals then managed, and then they end up being religion, and at least in the beginning they all have very well intentioned, but later on they develop differences. And so I like this idea of holistic view and universal values that we could use. Some of the most prominent scientists have had these thoughts about what is knowledge, what is this world, and one of them, obviously a very famous one, is Einstein says most beautiful and most profound emotion we can experience is the sensation of the mystical. Now, mystical is not something that you would normally accept as science. It is the sower of all true science. He is to whom this emotion is stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. But basically, the idea is that you have certain things that you cannot penetrate with material things, but you could penetrate with your own experience, and that becomes a very important ways to do. Even the value of religiousness, they think, is really related to that. I have, of course, I try to match Einstein. See my hair, and I try to even do mustache, and so that I can say something next to him. So it is very difficult for me to think mystically. I'm just admitting that I do not have this idea of somehow accepting mystical. It's maybe just I'm bound by my own training. I believe that religion has had bad history with science, and so that becomes a problem. because scientists have a little bit of difficulty with that. But I really do believe that there is nothing that cannot be approached scientifically. Maybe the science may be limited today, but that doesn't mean that scientifically cannot be approached. If one is willing to develop appropriate science, and that is what I think we are talking about here, holistic science, which is really very different than material science that I normally practice. There is a great need to work interdisciplinarily, philosophy, linguistics, language, physics, chemistry, biology, etc. But that said, I do want to go back to where I feel more comfortable with a little bit of science, so I'm just going to try to give you a scientific perspective of yoga. And the two major factors in scientific analysis are concerned with time and concentration dependence of all the phenomena. That is one of the cores of science. If something is scientific, we think that it will be affected by time and concentration. So I'm just going to show you something that has been published, and I don't really expect you to read all this stuff. I just want to impress you that I have all this information. But I basically want to make one point, and it is related to yoga and meditation. So they have done brain scanning, so that's this one, that shows. They have done some controls, that's what this shows. And this is real, the last graph is really what I wanted to show you. What they have is the people who have meditated for 15,000 hours, 30,000 hours, 45,000 hours, like that. That means that's the time. And they are able to see that there is a correlation in our brain, how our brain sees holistically. And that correlation is on this percentage correlation. And they found as you have longer hours of meditation, this is done by Dalai Lama's monks. This study was done by Dalai Lama's monks. And the study is published in Proceedings of National Academy of Science, one of the premier journals in science. And it shows that as you meditate longer, you have better correlation in your head. You understand these things more holistically. That's what it means. And so it gives me an opening that I, as a scientist, I can try to approach. The only thing is I have to reach to the level that Dr. Mehta and Swami Vivekananda has reached, perhaps, to get this. So there is a hope for all of us. That's what I'm trying to convey. I'm not trying to criticize, I'm just saying that the approach that I'm taking. Now, these are quotations that I have from Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And I'm not going to do the first two, which is basically defines what is yoga and how we might be able to do in our action. What I'm going to try to do is connect with this second one, which says Tapa Swadhyaya Ishwar Pranidhana Kriya Yoga. Or Kriya Yoga is performed by penance, self-study, and surrender to Ishwara. Ishwara sometimes is also translated as God, and to some people. But actually Patanjali himself, and this may be related to what we just heard about knowing about inner self rather than first before going to the outside world, is that Patanjali defines Ishvara not as something that is sitting somewhere outside. It's actually, he talks about Ishvara is untouched by klesha, raga, dvesha, which means any kind of pain and pleasure. Simple translation. Or karma phala, papa punya, which also means loss or profit. Again, it's very simplified translation. It basically is not concerned about consequences, and it is not affected by pain and pleasure. And so that any one of us can, if we can get to that level, then you will be, according to Patanjali Yoga Sutra, you will be Ishvara. And you can reach that state by doing yoga. This is the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, as many of you know, is the book to be followed. So this conflict about God and about ourselves, inner versus outside, is resolved actually, at least from Patanjali's time, which was 2,500 years ago. So how do we proceed? And where do we get stuck? So we have, this is from Sankhya Yoga, which says that we have every one of us have the material existence of ourselves. And then from material we have energy, from there we have mental, from there we have knowledge, then we have the bliss. These are the sheets that are around us. So our basic thing is our physical, and everything else moves from there. And as you can see the examples where this really dominates, physical is only like minerals, stones, anything that is very gross, that is physical. But then plants have energy because they can take air, animals have mind because they can roam around. Humans are supposed to have minimum knowledge, not only go by their mind. And then there is a chance that if we really raise ourselves, enlighten yourself, you can get to bliss, and you have some examples here. And they will act like angels, so they will help, they will be selfless, they will be doing the service to the society. I work with Professor DeFord of Psychology Department, and we developed we are developing a connection how we can do modern science from physical, where we talk about the physics, and then biological, talk about proteins, tissues, and so on and so forth, and get into psychological and social, and then we are able to then connect physical, energy, mind, and knowledge, and develop this holistic science that we can still use the science that we have been practicing, or that is acceptable to the modern academic community. So that's something that we are trying to do. Now, in terms of practice of yoga and other things, then you have this human exercise. I teach this course where we have practices about exercise and other things. You take it to the organs level, take it to the cell level, organelles level, then you get to the atoms and molecules and forces that hold these atoms and molecules, which is where really, again, from modern science, if you want to go down, this is the path we need to go. Or you can think of the other way around, whereby you start from atoms and molecules to get to the human behavior. However you want to take it, this is the pathway that we have defined. Many of the exercises we do is really because of the nerves. Again, that is all connected to brain, and then we are able to connect our mind and our body through nerves. Then we also do the breathing exercise. When somebody runs, they breathe very heavily, and that is a further down connection that you really, from tissues and cells, you are getting into the inside the cells, whereby there are mitochondria, and then they are able to connect with air that we breathe in. When we do pranayama, then we are able to connect deeper with the molecular forces, where then they are able to go into the chemical reactions. Again, this is only to impress you. I don't expect you to pay attention to that carefully. But I think they're all true. This is not, I'm not trying to fake here. And so that leads us, once we get to the molecules, that leads us to get all these elements that we know, which is the physical. We are only, the scientists, we are only interested and are able to do the physical level, not the energy level, not the mind level, not the knowledge level, not the angelic level. We are not there. We are not even trying that. We are only trying the material. But I'm trying to see that we can connect. And this is where the real, true purpose of my talk was, to make chemistry of yoga. I want to connect the basic approach in yoga and chemistry. And so this is periodic table, which everybody knows. In every chemistry lecture or lab, you will have a periodic table. And what I want you to pay attention to is this group 8. And I know some of you might be quite familiar with this: helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon. These are number 1 gases. They are gases. Other than hydrogen, as element, these are the only gases. What do the gases represent? Does anyone want to try? What the gases represent? When we have matters, we have solid, liquid, gases. There are 3 types of matter. Gases represent the most freedom. A solid thing will be sitting here. Liquid might flow, but the gases are free. So if you're thinking of freedom, you think of gases. And the gases don't really, you see these gases are these ones. And these are also known as noble gases or ideal gases. So I will come to that. Just give you just a little bit information about these elements. Every element has an atom, which has a proton or neutron inside and an electron outside. Here is an example of hydrogen atom, which has only 1 proton, 1 electron. Those of you who are not familiar with science, not interested in science, don't worry about it. Just look at this as a story. Helium, which is the next one, which is also gas, has 2 protons, 2 neutrons, and 2 electrons. This is very important. This kind of helium type of configuration is known with a statement. It's called duet state. Duet state. And then I have another example of argon. Again, don't worry about this, all these electrons here. Look at the outside electrons. Outside there are 8 electrons. And it is true for other than helium, every other ideal noble gas I mentioned to you, they all have 8 electrons in the outside. And that's called octet state. Now every noble gas is inert. This is very important. They are not as reactive because of octet state. Because they have 8 electrons in the outsides of their atom, and so they are not reactive. They are octet state. They are inert, and as a consequence, they are free. If they were not inert, they would be attached. And we are so many of us, when we are attached to so many things, we see the problem. Now, the important thing is journey. This is very, very important statement. Journey of every element that we know is really to reach that stability. Not everything is not ideal gas. Every element is not inert. As an example, I show it here. Sodium, very reactive. Never want to touch it. It touches water, explodes. Chlorine, of course, many of you have heard about. If you want to clean something, you put chlorine because it also removes everything. Very reactive. Both of them are very reactive. What is the difference between this? Here, look at this outer one has only 1 electron. If I somehow remove this and left, what will be left will be 8. So that will reach the octet. It's a fake octet. It's not real octet, but it's a fake. It still wants to do the fake one. The same thing is true with chlorine. It has 7 in the outside, and if it accepts 1 extra, it will also be 8. And that's exactly what happens in the salt that we eat, sodium chloride salt. The sodium gives one of this electron to this one, so this is now happy because it has octet state, and chlorine also is happy because it has octet state. So both of them then do not have desire to react to anything else, but they have to be interdependent. They have to be dependent with each other. So because if they leave each other, they lose their octet state. So then that's how they coexist. Talking about harmony, you need to have this stable state. I cannot, whether it's spouses or families or societies or countries or whatever you want to call them. We have to get to what is that driving us? That we need to reach a stable state which is inert, based on inert. And there is a chemistry behind it. And that chemistry we need to learn in today's lectures. I just told you the chemistry that we know, I know. But I have tried to connect this, duality and non-duality. Some of you are students of philosophy, you know. Duality is this positive and negative charges I just talked about. Non-duality is when you don't have at least the influence of it. Yes, to have the existence, you will still have them, but if you don't have influence of them, you get to non-duality. So the practice is to get unified. If we are all unified, then we reach that non-duality state. It may be fake. We really need to reach much higher, but nevertheless, that's where it is, chemically speaking, if you don't have the duality, you don't have to work. But idea is to move backward into non-duality by making our own efforts. And that is what is really we can do, and that is what we really should do. So, just one more, maybe 2 more slides to conclude, to get a little bit more sophisticated, is the forces. If you don't remove these charges, if you keep the charges high, what happens is then there is a Coulomb's law which tells you how much force will be involved if you have 2 charges. And I just made this calculation with my students. Don't worry about this number. We got some numbers here. This 2.6 or 0.26 nanonewton is the unit of force. Now, if you don't have charges, you still have some attraction. You don't have repulsion. Very interesting thing. If you don't have charges, there is no repulsion, only attraction. So you always come together. And that is governed by the gravitational force. This is derived by Newton. And if you use, for hydrogen atom, I use this, I get this, the force is 1 times 10 to the power minus 47. We don't have exact name. The other one is 2.6 times 10 to the power 8 Newton. So this is non-charged and this is charged. The difference is 10 to the power 39 times. It's like 10 trillion, no, 1,000 trillion times. If you are charged, you are that much more force involved. So it explodes. That's why when you're really angry at somebody, it explodes. Whereas if you are calm, no matter what somebody says, doesn't matter. This is the neutrality versus charge. That is the force that is involved. So this is our nature. We shouldn't feel bad if we are very charged, very angry sometimes. But we should also try to think that this is not unexplosive. You will have to be explosive. So if you don't want to be explosive, you need to move into neutral territory. And so that this interaction of duality, non-duality continues going back and forth. That is our life, and we do throughout our life. And I think it is a subject to study from modern science. This is how I'm trying to prove. Now, there has been another study that came in 2009, same journal, Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, and without going into details, I want to tell you that there is a way to know the truth, at least scientifically we think. So we can do the fMRI and find out what you are thinking inside. And so they ask people questions on some moral, ethical questions like abortion or euthanasia. There were 10 questions like that. And ask people to say what you think and what a typical American thinks. They found that what they think versus what typical American thinks is different. So that's what it shows, that when you have these here, these lights here, orange signals, that means these areas get activated, that means you see they are different. When they also ask what God thinks and what a typical American thinks, they also found actually more difference. When they ask what you think and what God thinks, no difference. They found no difference. So everybody, I mean, this is a goal, maybe wrongly so, but nevertheless, everybody has their own. The God is to you is exactly what you think. And there is a concept that you know in Sanskrit called Aham Brahmasmi, means I am it. Whether I am very enlightened or not, this is what the scientific explanation or experiment has shown us. So, this is my last slide. These are two great scientists in the last century. Edward Schrodinger, who got Nobel Prize for Physics, and he was a Vedantist. And so he says, talks about consciousness, talks about many conscious egos from whose mental experiences the one world is concocted, which means unified. There is obviously only one alternative, namely the unification of mind from consciousness. I hope that we will move in that direction in today's discussion. The multiplicity is only apparent. In truth, there is only one mind. This is the doctrine of the Upanishads, which is the ancient Indian text of knowledge in India. And not only Upanishads, and not only the Upanishads, the mystically experienced union with God regularly entails this attitude, unless it is opposed by strong existing prejudices like scientists like myself. And this means that is less easily accepted in the West, again, say scientists like myself, than the East. And there is another Nobel Prize who really discovered the DNA, the gene that we know, its structure, that is Francis Crick, and he believes in opposite. The scientific belief is that our minds, the behavior of our brains, can be explained by the interactions of nerve cells and molecules associated with them. The idea of soul distinct from the body and not subject to our known scientific laws is a myth. It is easy to see how such myths could have arisen. Indeed, without the detailed knowledge of the nature of matter and radiation and biological evolution, such myths are only too plausible. What I'm trying to say with these is that these are two giants in the field. They're thinking differently. That doesn't mean that we don't have way. I mean, the first one I said, there is a hope, maybe we learn something today. The second one is the hope that I'm trying to move forward and see if we can connect these two. So this is only with the known knowledge. That doesn't mean we cannot increase the knowledge. So that is my interest in today's seminar, to see if I can increase my knowledge and be able to use some of this. And with this, there is another saying in the Indian text, it says, Eko aham bahushyami. That doesn't, it's only one me. That doesn't mean I cannot manifest it in many, many ways. So the ideas coming from different directions, different viewpoints should be welcome. And I think coming from Indian perspective, they are always welcome. And so we should differ, we should ask questions. Hopefully there will be our way of learning and our way of contributing as well. Thank you very much.
Samantha, hopefully this was a good insight into holistic science, and I think we are hopefully given a lot of food of thoughts for you to reflect on your own selves, and then maybe have some questions on that. Okay, now we go to the next session. So one request to our respected speaker that in spirit of time, please try to be within your time, and we'll provide a bell when 2 minutes are left, so you can just wrap up your sessions. With that one, we are going to go into the next session. Chemistry of yoga. Yoga beyond exercise and breathing. It's very interesting. A connotation of yoga, it is both everybody has their own connotation of yoga. So it's very interesting when Dr. Ram Singh gave us this topic. I started wondering, he's talking about beyond exercise and breathing. So Dr. Singh, I'm really curious to see what is beyond breathing and exercise.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Creating the churning within by 1 or 2 small points. I have a question. Chemistry is it a result or is it a cause? Chemistry, is it a result of the inner processes which is happening, or it is the cause? So what I'm trying to tell you is, see, we had a funny incident. In one youth retreat, the 2 boys had quarreled, and one boy slapped the other, and the other's hand was raised. But as soon as, within a fraction of a moment, he was reminded that they taught us to avoid the clashes. So he just brought his hand down, shaken. So my appeal is, okay, when I'm angry, the energy is just being transferred. So 10:39, am I losing 10:39 when I'm angry? Yes. So if I'm also angry, I'm also losing 10:39. But if I'm restrainful, if something comes in between as the other boy took his hand down, I'm the gainer. I'm receiving 10:39. And this is my call to chemistry people. Please research on that. So my call is, see, the science, it's very good that the science is trying to evaluate everything and the functional MRI is toward rescue. Or we are moving ahead. Why don't you take the functional MRI of the people who are the experienced ones, in whose presence everybody feels joyous, forgets the worldly woes and vows and stresses and tensions? Why not to take their functional MRI and find out what's the difference between a normal person and them? And that will tell you a lot of things. Because what we are trying to do is, science is trying to work with the tools based on or developed by 5 senses. What's eliminating the 5 senses? What's beyond that? And that is by observation and perception. So even Einstein, when he was once asked, "Sir, what do you want to now know?" And he said, "I now want to know the observer, through which I had made so many observations and came out with the science. Now I want to know the nature of the observer itself." So true scientists are always open that, okay, at this moment we know this much, and that doesn't mean that there is no science further. Even I would contemplate to say that everything is universe, either has to be a chaos or has to be a regular fundamental scientific thing. And if it has to be a science, we have to try to know that science. It's not necessary because we don't know there is no science. So this is a call for both attempts to meet somewhere in the center so the future generations can get benefited. But it was a very nice perspective placed, and about the vision part we'll deal later on as we go on, but that was again a very nice focus. So this is just a holistic perspective I thought I can give. Thank you very much.